Good afternoon, preppers. Welcome to Goshen Prepping. Man, talk about lots of scary headlines, lots of scary YouTube videos out there. It seems like every other minute there's something else happening that makes us want to run and head for the hills, and maybe we should. But you have to understand in these situations, in every single one of them, you need to take a step back and look at the bigger picture of what's happening, because there's always more there than meets the eye. So stay to the end of this video, because I want you to see what we're going to go through on this, but even more so, there's a bigger, deeper meaning than what's happening here that I find a lot of people are completely omitting or missing. All right, when it comes to nuclear war, we have never been closer to a nuclear war than we have been right now. Let's jump right into this. Putin's nuclear threats move doomsday clock closest ever to Armageddon, atomic scientists say. Experts say there's an unparalleled threat level this year was Russia's invasion of Ukraine and Putin's thinly veiled threat to deploy nuclear weapons. He says it all the time. The 2023 countdown time was set to 90 seconds to midnight, 10 seconds closer than before. And as we move the clock closer to midnight, we're sending a message that the situation is becoming more urgent, for sure. And I've been saying this is actually where the fear comes in. Putin has given no indication that he's willing to accept defeat. And many find Putin's threats of nukes simply to be saber-rattling. I don't. I don't think he is going to get backed into a corner, and nukes are definitely not off the table. However, the experts doing this are also not just spitballing either. Doomsday clock moved to just 2 minutes to apocalypse. Obviously, this is a few years ago, but I want to show you the ramifications of where we're at now. Again, right now we're at 90 seconds. You can see in this graph that all throughout the last 30, 40, 50 years, 50, even 70 years, it has actually changed closer to midnight to an attack and further away. But look at this paragraph. During the 62 Cuban Missile Crisis, considered by many analysts to be the closest ever between a face-off between the U.S. and the USSR, came to 7 minutes to midnight. 7 minutes. The closest we've ever been to nuclear war was 7 minutes, and now it's 90 seconds. It really shows you the dangers and the ramifications we're in right now. And because of this, the World Health Organization has actually issued time to stockpile on stuff you need in case there's a nuclear war. And you should. The WHO urges governments to stockpile in the event of a nuclear emergency. And of course, they're showing potassium iodide. It is essential that governments are prepared to protect the health of populations and respond immediately to emergencies. This includes having ready supplies, life-saving medications, everything you need from radiation. And of course, the best way to prepare for this, and it's available right now, is potassium iodide. And here's the dosage recommendation chart from the CDC. I'll put a link below in case you want to check this out yourself. But we're looking at, for adults, 130 milligrams. Kids 12 through 18, 65 milligrams. Children 1 month through 3 years, 32 milligrams. And infants through 1 month, 16 milligrams. And we're looking at an oral solution for that. If you haven't picked up your potassium iodide, I would do it now. There's still a lot available. I'll put a link below in case you want to get some. But I couldn't recommend it more. Now, one of the main components leading to the place on the atomic clock isn't simply just Russia's saber rattling, but also their invent, I should say, of their new hypersonic missiles. From the Barents Observer, sailing West Atlantic, Northern Fleet frigate plays propaganda game with hypersonic missiles. Lots of propaganda. And the frigate Gorshkov, which is their best frigate, by the way, their top-notch one, actually had its tracker turned off. But another warship in their fleet called the Kama had it turned on, so we can see exactly where they're at, give or take about 100 miles off the coast of the United States. And that should be thought-provoking. It should be a little bit of fear there, because these missiles are so fast, they will give little or no warning whatsoever in case there's actually a first strike attack from the Russians. But after all, this simply is just a drill and preparation. Every military knows you continuously drill, so that way when it actually does take place, you'll know what you're doing. Now they've finished with this drill, off they go, moving toward their next drill. Russian warship armed with hypersonic missiles now to train with the Chinese and South African navies. The test was part of a long voyage of the Admiral Gorshkov frigate launched earlier this month when Russia's state media said the warship was dispatched with their new hypersonic missiles. Now the deployment will also include joint training with Chinese and South African navies off the coast of South Africa. But nevertheless, I saw a lot of YouTube videos out there talking about, oh my gosh, there's a nuclear-capable Russian warship off the East Coast. And I wasn't really getting all fired up about this, because you have to understand this kind of things happens all the time. Now, granted, this is not the Cold War like it used to be. It used to be during the Cold War, this kind of stuff happened all the time. During my service in the Cold War, we would actually get buzzed by Russian MiGs going supersonic. They would go so fast, cause a sonic boom. And we're talking about, man, they were so low compared to where we were. Because Russia had a policy of, well, don't shoot Americans. And Americans' policy was, don't shoot them unless we're fired at first. So we play these war games all the time. But nevertheless, now, because of the state of tension we're at, it's really showing up everywhere in the news and on YouTube channels. And to kind of prove my point, if I scroll down in the same article by the lovely CNN, by the way, there's a news agency for you, it shows another ship. This one's actually been poised off the coast of Hawaii. Unfortunately, in this video, you can't really see in detail what an amazing Navy ship this is. And I say that with tongue in cheek, because when you talk about a mighty Russian Navy ship, this is not one of those. This is just a spy ship. And Russia, if you ever have actually done any serving during the Cold War, was notorious for putting out countless ships around the globe. But they were often like cargo ships, even tugboats sometimes, fishing trawlers, just to kind of give their Navy presence. I mean, they were very much, if you compare them with the actual, like for example, the Gorshchev, if you want to compare it with that, that's a ship. These other ones are nothing but simply just spying, because that's what Russians love to do, is spy and see how they're going to do about this. But I've seen other channels and news agencies said, look at this ship off Hawaii. This is nothing new. This spy ship has been noticed there numerous times in the last 10 or 20 years. It's always off the coast taking pictures. But again, since things are heating up, people are saying, oh, look, there's a ship out there off Hawaii. It's really not that big of a deal. Now, more importantly, these other channels and news agencies love to ignore the more important concepts of these articles, and that's what I'm going to show you now. Back to this article again. Let's go to the top. This headline will tell you what's going on here. They're training with the Chinese and South African navies in South Africa. Why is that important? Because other channels and news agencies are so focused on, oh, look, there's a ship off Hawaii or this ship out in the Atlantic Ocean, that they ignore China and South African navies. What does that have to do with anything? Both Russia, China, India, South Africa, and Brazil are part of BRICS. Now, for the longest time, I've been warning about this, that BRICS started out as simply just an economic agreement between these 5 countries. But other countries are joining on now, and I said, guys, you watch. This is going to turn more into military. And I actually had people say, oh, it's nothing. I've literally had people argue with this. It's nothing. It's simply just an economic thing. And I said, no, this is going to turn into a military pact. And here it is. This article specifically says that now they're actually starting to do joint drills with Russia's finest frigate, loaded with hypersonic missiles. And the thing is, the problem is people tend to forget that Russia has numerous missiles everywhere besides simply just this one frigate. They're called submarines, and they're full of nuclear arsenals. So a frigate floating around the Atlantic seems like a threat, and it is. I'm not discounting that. But if you scroll down and look at this, when it comes to submarines, Russia has an operational nuclear force of 11 nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines, capable of delivering up to 624 nuclear warheads. So, propaganda nailed it. This frigate coming out 100 miles off the coast is a propaganda technique. It is Russia trying their best to scare the people of the United States, and obviously it's working. That's all people have been talking about. But you have to understand, think about our Navy and what we can do. Guaranteed on that finest frigate from Russia, guaranteed there's one of our nuclear fast attack submarines shadowing its every move, following it along just in case. Long story short, are we close to a nuclear war? Of course we are. Closer now than ever. But with that, we need to prep, and prep with a level head. Watch all these news articles and read, but step back, keep a level head. Don't get caught up in all these single headlines. Okay, so look at the headlines, read the articles, but don't panic. Prep. Because at Goshen Prepping, we say all the time, we prep so we don't have to live in fear.